Picture a man in 2nd century Rome. He wears a philosopher's robe, carries scrolls, sports a long beard. He walks into a room and begins lecturing. Anyone watching would assume he's a Stoic or a Platonist. He's not. He's a Christian, and he wants you to make that mistake. His name is Justin Martyr, and he's about to rebrand an apocalyptic Jewish sect as the world's greatest philosophy. The question is, what did Christianity gain in that transformation, and what did it lose? To understand what Justin did, we need to see what Christianity looked like before the philosophers got hold of it. The earliest Christians, Paul, the gospel writers, expected the world to end imminently. Jesus was coming back soon. This was a movement defined by urgency, not intellectual system building. It condemned the rich. It promised God's kingdom on earth. Some traces of philosophical influence appear in Paul's letters and the Gospel of John, but nothing resembling a formal philosophical school. Christianity in 50 CE was an apocalyptic Jewish sect. Apocalyptic meaning it expected God to intervene dramatically and end the current world order. Justin Martyr, martyred around 150 CE in Rome, is the pivotal figure. He tells his own story. As a young man, he shopped among philosophical schools, Stoics, Peripatetics, Pythagoreans, Platonists, before a Christian teacher finally satisfied his search. Here's what's crucial. Justin didn't abandon the philosopher identity when he converted. He kept the robes, he kept the beard, he kept the scrolls. He presented Christianity as the best philosophical school, the one that had found the ultimate truth all others were groping toward. Even at his trial, he defended himself like Socrates before the Athenian jury, a philosopher confronting unjust authority. Justin's key intellectual move was the concept of the logos, Greek for word or reason. He argued that Greek philosophers like Plato had accessed fragments of the divine logos through their reasoning, but Christians possessed the logos fully in Christ. In one stroke, Justin claimed all of Greek philosophy's achievements as Christianity's own, partial glimpses of a truth only Christianity held in its entirety. This was rebranding on a civilizational scale. Justin planted the seed. A generation later, Clement of Alexandria turned it into a full-scale intellectual program. Writing around 200 CE, Clement made two deliberate moves. First, he suppressed apocalypticism, the fire and brimstone end times talk that defined early Christianity, made the movement look unsophisticated to educated Greeks and Romans. Clement didn't ignore this tradition. He buried it on purpose. Second, he rehabilitated wealth. The letter of James flatly condemns the rich. Come now, you rich people, weep and wail, for the misery is coming to you. Clement argued that wealth and fine things were compatible with the Christian life. This made Christianity viable for the educated, propertied classes who might join a philosophical school. The deepest legacy of this transformation is hiding in plain sight. In a doctrine most Christians assume comes straight from the Bible, the immortality of the soul. Most Christians today believe the soul is immortal, immaterial, and survives death to ascend to a higher realm. That's not the New Testament, that's Plato. Plato's dialogue, the Phaedo, written around 360 BCE, teaches that the soul is immortal and pre-existing, the body is a prison, and at death the soul escapes to a realm of eternal forms. The Hebrew Bible describes Sheol, a shadowy underworld where all the dead go, regardless of merit. Paul talks about resurrection of the body, not an immaterial soul escaping the body. The doctrine most Christians call biblical maps almost perfectly onto Plato and barely onto the New Testament at all. If Clement reshaped what Christianity taught, Origen reshaped how Christians read their own scriptures. Working in the 3rd century, Origen produced the hexapla from the Greek for sixfold, 6 parallel columns of the Old Testament side by side, the Hebrew text, a Greek transliteration of the Hebrew, and the 4 different Greek translations, Aquila, Symmachus, the Septuagint, and Theodotion. The Septuagint was the Greek translation most widely used by early Christians. This wasn't devotional reading, this was critical scholarship, comparing versions, identifying discrepancies, establishing what the text said. Origen also wrote extensive commentaries using multi-layered interpretation, literal, moral, and allegorical. Origen also taught something remarkable: universal restoration, apokatastasis in Greek, the idea that all created beings, including Satan himself, would eventually be reconciled to God. In Origen's lifetime, this was perfectly orthodox. No council condemned him, no bishop excommunicated him. 3 centuries later, the Fifth Ecumenical Council in 553 CE condemned Origenism as heresy. The same teachings, the same arguments, a different verdict. Origen didn't change. The boundary moved. Orthodoxy was not a fixed point that Origen deviated from. It was defined after the fact and drawn so that he fell on the wrong side. Step back and see the full scope. In roughly 150 years from Justin to Origen, Christianity underwent one of the most consequential intellectual transformations in Western history. It entered the 2nd century as an apocalyptic Jewish sect, expecting the world to end. It exited the 3rd century as a philosophically sophisticated tradition capable of competing with and eventually absorbing the best of Greco-Roman intellectual culture. The cost, the apocalyptic urgency, the radical economic egalitarianism, the distinctly Jewish categories of thought are all muted or lost. When modern Christians debate doctrine and appeal to what the church has always believed, they are often unknowingly appealing to Plato, filtered through Clement, Origen, and their successors. What people call traditional Christianity is itself a product of radical innovation. Understanding this doesn't destroy the tradition, but it forces an honest reckoning with what tradition is. Not a pure, unchanged inheritance from the apostles, but a living, contested, philosophically hybrid creation. Remember Justin in his philosopher's robes. The man who decided the best way to save Christianity was to make it look like something else entirely. He succeeded beyond anything he could have imagined.